Okay, we ready to go? Nau mai, haere mai, ki tēnei hui. Before we start the business of this session, I just want to acknowledge it's a very special day because it's Elise's birthday. Haru huru tau. And it's also Nina's birthday, but she's not in the room, so she misses the embarrassment. But if you want to later acknowledge, we thank you for all of your work and hope you have a lovely birthday. Right, so we are here to talk about the decision timeline, you know, what's going to happen going forward. And so I will throw over to Margot. So this is public and live streamed. Thank you.
I can move further.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Chair. So as our Chair has outlined, so today this briefing will step you through the thinking to date around the decision timeline for establishment of the entity. I do want to emphasise it's the thinking to date, so it's not final. We think we're pretty close, but it is still subject to change. And obviously a conversation like we're about to step into here could provide some intel to that. What you have been sent today, so there's a couple of slides. There really are only a couple of slides, so we'll work through those today. You've also been sent an A3 document which has a lot more background detail, and I've provided that because I appreciate some of you may want further detail, and some of you might be happy in the summary, so hopefully I've accommodated all needs with that. So I am just conscious that there was a request from yourselves to provide a bit more information and step you through this. So hopefully by taking this approach we can meet that need and answer any of your questions. And I guess any briefings like this do come with some caveats. So the main caveat here, apart from being draft thinking, is that we are stepping through this in anticipation of all four councils making the decision to enter into the regional model as well. So to date, just in case you aren't aware, so obviously ourselves and Porirua have committed to the regional entity. The other three councils are yet to take their decisions. So just a wee update there. Okay. I thought it might be useful before we start delving into timelines and roles is just to step you through what the structure, our draft structure is starting to look like. So top left corner are yourselves, so councils as shareholders and also our mana whenua partners. What we're looking to do is to utilise the existing advisory oversight group, so that's the mayoral forum, is to utilise the advisory oversight group to act as a representative stakeholder committee initially to take decisions and to help with the establishment, the early part of the establishment. I would like to emphasise there in that heading AOG temporary. So that is a temporary short-term arrangement. Once the local body elections have concluded later this year, we would come to you and look for your confirmation for council's ongoing representative to the stakeholder committee. So that's what I've tried to articulate there with the blue box with AOG and then the different shaded box underneath. The AOG structure, I will be coming to you in June and asking you to endorse our representative to have limited delegations. And part of that limited delegation is to appoint the establishment board members. The establishment board will do exactly what it says on the tin, is to focus on the establishment of the entity to get us to 1 July 2026. That is not the enduring board. That is a decision that will take place later. It is a very limited focus. The establishment board will be supported by an establishment steering group, which will be our collective chief executives. And there will also be an interim chief executive. So the interim chief executive, again, not intended to be the enduring chief executive. The duration of that role we haven't delved into, so there is no set time frame around that. To support the day-to-day establishment of all of the detail, the ins and outs, and the program management, the project management, and the dependencies, and all those wonderful things, we will need an establishment director. And that director will work to both the chief executive, the interim chief executive, and the establishment steering group. The establishment director will have an establishment team underneath them that will be a mixture of dedicated resource, council resource, and that is the central establishment team. In addition to that, each council will have their own version of a project team to focus on our own council activities. So for some of the other councils who have water staff, they will need to work through those decisions. So we will need to think about the IT changes, our staff impact, customer communications, customer experience. There's a whole lot of things that we as council on our own need to think about, either just on our own or to feed into the central establishment team. So I hope that gives a flavour, and I appreciate that probably generates some questions, but what I'd like to do is step you through the timeline. There's only another couple of slides. Step you through the timeline, and then we can start to work through questions. Oh, excuse me, hang on. Sorry, Councillor. Oh.
Sorry, could you just leave it up for a little bit longer so I can just sort of think about this?
It's very tiny.
Haven't we got one of those here? Oh, it's a different one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so stepping into the decisions that will be taken in the next couple of months. What we'll do is just step you through the types of decisions, the group or the role that will take them, and then the next slide will step you through the timeline so that you can see the types of the decision and then the phasing of the decisions. So council, and my shorthand language there, council includes committee, so it's committee/council. Your decision-making points will be, so coming up in June, as I mentioned, I'll be coming to you and asking you to confirm a limited delegation for our AOG representative, and that limited delegation will be focused on appointing the establishment board and to progress the finalisation of our foundational governance documents. The other decision will be in August, so yourselves, I will be coming to you asking you to sign off and adopt the WSDP, the long-awaited WSDP, and attached to that the draft foundation documents or principles as relevant to the document. Looking ahead to December, Council will be asked to ratify the final foundational documents, and that will include Statement of Expectations, and also Council's elected member representative to the Stakeholder Committee. So that will be December this year. What I've put in italics there is just as just so you know we haven't forgotten, but if for some reason we're not able to disband AOG ahead of the election, we're very aware that representation could change. So if we are not able to disband AOG before the election, then post the election we will need to confirm Council's representation on that AOG group for as long as it's needed. But AOG is not intended to run past the election and certainly not beyond the end of this year. So AOG, with the assumed delegation, we'll be looking to them to appoint the establishment board and then progress the development of the foundational governance documents, which I've mentioned already. Our Chief Executive, along with our fellow Council Chief Executives, will be asked to certify the WSDP in August. Now, that will be before it comes to you. Okay, so Chief Executive certification before coming to you for adoption. The Chief Executive will also be looking to approve the appointment plan for the Establishment Board and the Interim Chief Executive. And that Establishment Program Director role I mentioned, our Chief Executives will be looking to take that decision sooner rather than later. Skipping ahead, the Establishment Board will appoint the Interim Chief Executive. It's important that the board and the interim chief executive have a good working relationship and know that they can work with each other. And then looking out to next year, the Establishment Board will also approve the water services strategy that the new organisation will prepare, and that in response to the Statement of Expectations. And the Stakeholder Committee, so the Owners Committee, just so that we understand the Stakeholder Committee, that they will be asked to review the water services strategy in about May next year, and then at the right point, we'll look to appoint the enduring board members, and at this stage we don't think that will be any earlier than September. Okay. So I appreciate those last couple are quite a way out, looking out into next year, but I think it's important you have context to understand what happens beyond the interim or the temporary roles. And finally, in your pack, if just in case you can't see this on screen, just thought it might be useful to step through the timing of those decisions. So I won't repeat the decisions because we've covered them a couple of times now, but I think if I just pause here for a moment and let you have a look at the phasing of the decisions, and then I can pause there and take questions.
Yes, I have some questions. The first one I have is just about those red hashtags. When you say council, does that mean committee?
Sorry, yes, that was my lazy terminology. So committee/council,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Well, yes, some of them are committee only and some of them are committee referring or recommending up to council. So in the larger A3 document, I have clarified that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay, great. All right. Mia Whānau, you had a question?
Just a couple for clarification. So just so I'm clear, so the Establishment Board, which will be decided by the Stakeholder Committee, or AOG.
AOG, yes,
Yep.
yes.
Is the temporary transition board before appointing the enduring board, which is probably in a year or so.
Correct.
And either boards will not include any current Wellington Water directors or ELT staff.
So the legislation prescribes that the board cannot have a currently elected representative or a council staff member. It does not prescribe around existing governance members like Wellington Water Board. So that would not be my decision to take, but I would not be surprised if that was a request that came through from yourselves.
All right, I have a list of questions, and just so you know, councillors online, I do have your names on the list. So I'll work through, first of all, Councillor Brown.
Thanks. The AOG, the temporary, and the establishment steering group. So what is the difference? Is it just I see that one of them's got chief executives as well as delegates, or is the establishment steering group just officers?
So the steering group is chief executives. So that are the chief executives of the councils and Wellington Water. AOG are the mayors and the mana whenua representatives.
So if we want to make sure that our chief executive is actually keeping us fully informed, we're going to have to basically demand an arrangement with the chief executive accordingly.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we would voluntarily keep you up to date, but I think it's
there's
more
difference between voluntarily and actually requiring it. And it feels to me, because I think in the past, to be honest, I felt that some of those things have happened in a very remote sort of way, and the information is dribbled through to us in a fairly accidental way. We could require that our chief executive was reporting to us.
Our chief executive is going to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe we can shortcut the process. What would you like to put as an expectation? And I can agree to meet an expectation rather than us go around and you demand something of me.
No. I think I'd actually put it in writing. Yeah. So that we all understand.
Yeah.
Because it's just that in the past, to be honest, not you obviously, but previous chief
You might need to speak into your mic.
There has been a certain disconnect, I would say, between some of the conversations that have occurred and what we've been kept informed about. And I don't think that would be appropriate through this stage.
No, it's fair enough.
Yeah.
Got that.
Yeah.
Councillor Pennant.
It's like to follow on from, I think, the Mayor's question. I'm probably not the only one that has some quite strong concerns around the governance and how we're going to, particularly working with the other councils, how we're going to avoid some of the mistakes and failures in process that have happened already. So what is the, given, I don't know, Tori, you'll be talking to the other mayors, but, from my perspective, it got very political. So how in this structure can we, or in the foundation documents, really tighten it up so it is clear that people are being appointed for their skills in the water area?
Absolutely. So what I haven't prescribed here is any of the detail around the appointment process or the supporting information. So both the Establishment Board and the Enduring Board will be appointed based on a skills matrix. And that skills matrix is not finalised yet. When it is finalised, which is expected to be around the end of this month, we will be looking to share that with you so that you can then have a look at that, because I understand there is a skills matrix for the existing board. So we do need to make sure we learn those lessons and make sure that they come through, not just in the skills matrix, but what we're looking for in the board members, but also in our foundational governance documents, what's in the stakeholder agreement, what's in the statement of expectations, all of those things. So that's what we're starting to work through now. What do those documents look like? And we've heard you over the last sort of 6 months or so in your concerns, both around specifics around stormwater, for example, but also your concerns around governance as well. So we've picked up on those and we are feeding those into the shaping of those documents at the moment.
So just to clarify, through all those documents, it will be that the directors are appointed on the basis of their skill in water.
Yes. Well, there are multiple skill sets, but water is definitely one of them. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Margot. Answered quite a few of the parts I had on the top of my head. My question is around when and the timing, given it's in October, depending on the date, if it's post-election that some of these decisions are being made, how can we, what assurances are there, either in the legislation or otherwise, that if you've got half a new council, they are making an informed decision, or do we intend to bring this decision pre-election?
So as scary as it sounds, we are aiming to get this all sorted, the decisions that we need for October before the election, because it's a challenging enough and complex enough process to span triennium. So we need it to be as clean as we can, and so that's why we've split the decisions as we have, so that we can try and straddle that and manage that as best we can. Yeah.
Just supplementary to that, do we know if this is in line with other processes for local authorities around the country?
Others have done things differently, and I was told something yesterday, so I'm just going to refer to so the Waikato cohort, who are doing things slightly differently, and there are 7 councils involved in their cohort. They have actually established an interim board, and it's their chief executives are forming the interim board. So they are cognizant of the same challenges that you're referring to, Councillor, but they have approached it somewhat differently to what we're proposing to. Yeah.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I just want to, while you've got the screen up, just ask about the governance arrangements just around this council making decisions. And you referred to it going to committee. One question I've got is double handling, and 2, it should be the council, the governing council, making this decision, and whether if there is going to a committee beforehand, whether there is sufficient time between the 2 meetings so that it's not just seen as a rubber stamping.
Thank you. Absolutely acknowledge that. So, for example, the decision that I've referenced that I'll be bringing to you in June, so we have checked delegations, and I have checked with our DEM services team, and that will come to committee, LTP, FP committee, and that's in line with delegations. The others, to be fair, off the top of my head, I can't remember if they're all, I think they are all committee to recommend to council, and we would look to do that the same day.
Okay, so I'm going to, and I'll take this offline, but I am going to request further information about that advice, because I think this should be a decision by our governing council, and we should be making that decision. I'm sure the other councils in the region are making this decision. So, but I'll take that offline and follow through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Thank you. And Margot, thank you for all that you've done. I have to say, though, that this has given me horrible flashbacks to the Let's Get Welly Moving situation, where we basically set up a government's arrangement, which meant we really got informed and didn't have any real control at all. So I guess I'm going to the August decision, because that looks like the last decision this council might make. Possibly the October disestablishment, but the August decision is really key. Mm-hmm. How are we going to ensure we have the best efforts to achieve those things that we said were strong expectations in our last meeting on this?
So I can give you absolute assurance that myself and the team with me are working through what you asked us to do back in May. So we are definitely progressing those, and they will be brought to you. So and I appreciate you may not have had a chance to look at it yet, Councillor, but the supplementary A3 document that was sent out today, that does include reporting back on that suite of amendments. So I included that whilst it's not a specific decision, because a number of them were around providing advice. I have included it in that A3 to make sure that you have comfort that I've not lost sight of those. That A3 is in chronological order, by the way, so August chunk will be quite meaty. So we definitely are doing that. I think, Councillor, one of the other things perhaps is worth touching on, the first part of your question. I think a conversation we should have, and whether August is the right time, I'm conscious it's going to be quite a full-on session, but maybe sometime thereafter, is how do we as officers keep you informed as decisions are being made by the established governance structures? How do we best keep you informed? What is the best way to do that, recognising the role and responsibility that each party has? So where the decision-making lies and where the information sharing needs to happen. So I don't have a set view on that at the moment, but I do think that's a conversation that we should plan for.
Yeah, I'm also looking at CEs appointing the establishment director. How much feedback will we get about the options there as elected members?
I don't believe that there is a huge... So that is not a decision that... Our current planning is that's not a decision for elected members.
No, I understand that, but nevertheless, it might be nice to have a bit of a heads up before it actually happens.
We can certainly take that into account, absolutely, and that I think goes to what myself and both our chief exec has talked about, and how we keep you close on the right information without just dumping information on you for a just in case purpose, that we make sure it's the right information ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm really horribly concerned about this, because we have not done in my view, in my decade on council, we have not done partnership very well. We haven't done it so it's to the advantage of Wellington City. We've always seemed to have been the ones paying more and having less say proportionately. Yeah, I'm really worried that's going to happen again.
Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah.
No more questions from you at the moment? No, just worries.
All right, that's it.
Okay. Councillor Randall.
I just want to remind us of what is the estimated budget for the establishment of the new water entity, and what's Wellington City Council's share of that?
So Wellington City Council, we have in the annual plan in order of magnitude around 8 million for our contribution.
And do you know what the overall budget is?
Oh, not off the top of my head, but I can see Andrew's wanting to mention.
I think it was around 15 million.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are questions really about when and who. So there is a number of things that are also decided. So starting, I guess I'll just wrap them into one question. There are three things which are going to be decided, which I think I'd just like to know when and who is going to make these. Submitting the water services plan for the regional entity, submitting the statement of expectation, and when a decision on the governance representation is going to be decided on the enduring board. So who and when is going to make those decisions in this structure?
So let's start with the first one. So submitting the water services delivery plan. So that is your decision. So in terms of adopting the plan, that is your decision, and so it's a joint water services delivery plan. So it will span all 5 councils, assuming that they make their decisions. So that plan, and that is coming to you. Meeting is scheduled for 20th of August. So that's definitely yourselves. That is that's in the forward program. The statement of expectations, and I'll need to refer to my notes, and you know I should know this off the top of my head by now. So the statement of expectation principles, so that will be part of the August conversation. So there are quite a few sections to the August decision, meeting and decision, and the statement of expectation principles is one of those. And it's principles so that then we can go away, us and assuming the AOG, can go away and further work on those to finalise the statement of expectations. And then that will be the establishment board. I'm desperately trying to remember that. I'll need to double check that in my notes, but I think that's the establishment board that will sign that off. And then the governance representation for which group?
For the enduring board.
So appointing the members of the enduring board?
Well, no, deciding on the structure of the representation of the enduring board. Is it the jury board or is it the oversight board? Sorry, oversight, the one that sits over the enduring board on an ongoing basis.
So that the owners committee?
Yes.
So the owners committee, so the stakeholder committee. So that is a decision that will come back to council, not a committee, council, in December this year for your Wellington City Council representative to that committee.
Okay, can I go back on the list? Okay, in terms of one more, so if we look at the water services plan and the statement of expectations, while it may be coming to us as a decision, obviously it's a combined joint decision, so therefore which body is going to draft it? Well, because it has to be done in a common way. I mean, I really strongly get the sense that we haven't got any option but to approve it without significant consequences. So I'm just wondering, there's negotiation involved. I'm wondering which body, is it like the establishment?
So when you say negotiation, can I ask to clarify, what do you think negotiation will be required for the water services delivery plan?
I'm not very familiar with what needs to go into it. So I'm just conscious of, and it's already been highlighted by Councillor Free, that I noticed that we are apparently funding about half of the money for the establishment. We have half of the water. It's about the overall governance and say that Wellington City is going to have in these decisions. And so at the moment, the AOG, we have 1 vote of 7, 1 vote of 5 or something like that amongst it. And in an ongoing basis, we're going to decide the ongoing governance. And so we just want to understand where that discussion is going to be and how we know what the decisions are.
So thank you. That's helpful clarification. So the water services delivery plan is largely prescribed to us through the legislation, and DIA have provided all councils with a template that we are strongly advised or highly recommended to use. So it's not a document that we can decide what we put in and what we don't put in, so it's quite prescriptive. So whatever we produce, must be legislatively compliant, and that is our minimum viable product. And then thereafter, making sure we have enough information that we think both puts forward a credible plan to government, but also that we think will be adopted by DIA, approved by DIA. So The Water Services Delivery Plan is being developed jointly across the 5 councils, and we are having almost daily conversations about what goes in there. These conversations have been going on for months. So if we think, for example, the investment program, if we think, for example, the governance arrangements and how they might work, the timing of it, how might the implementation of this water plan take effect. So that's work that has been going on for months in anticipation of each council making the decision to enter into the regional model. Some councils have also been thinking about a water services delivery plan for going alone. So there's been a bit of dual thinking going on, but certainly as a collective, we've been thinking about this for some time. So the water plan, there isn't any negotiation needed as such for the water services delivery plan because it does not have the same amount of detail or expectation that perhaps the stakeholder agreement has. What is in there is an investment program, and the investment program is for each council, and that is developed up on a cost to serve model. So we don't need to negotiate with Porirua or Upper Hutt as to what the investment is and the water charges because it is specific for each TA. I hope that, does that help? Oh,
I just also add a point of clarification, Councillor, the $8 million that you requested, that's not about the work that's being done that Margot has talked about. That's for future establishment costs as well. So there are other costs to the work that is being done that we've been incurring as well. So that's kind of the historic lens, at least up until the Water Services Delivery Plan gets established and the temporary establishment board gets established, and then the $8 million or $15 million in total, and those are rounded figures, that is a separate cost to that.
Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, my question is around the drafting of the foundation documents. We gave, I feel like, quite a lot of good guidance in terms of what we would like to see in there. I just recognise that the delegation includes providing the delegation to finalise the draft foundation documents, and then between then and it coming back on the 20th of August, I'm assuming on the 20th of August, the decision in front of us will essentially be to approve or reject, because we wouldn't be able to have the conversation with the rest of the councils. So I guess the question is, in the formation of the foundational documents or anything like that, what opportunities would be provided to councillors to provide further input into how that's going, or advise in the sort of discussions around perhaps some of those more contentious things that we wanted to see in the foundation documents?
Absolutely. So the decision that we'll bring to you in August, other than the WSDP, there are no final decisions in those governance documents at that point. What we're looking for essentially is adopting the principles and giving the approval for the AOG with delegation to go away and progress those. So the final decision point on those governance documents is December this year. That's where council will be asked to ratify those documents.
Okay, fantastic.
We need a general steer in August because that then relates to the WSDP, but it is a general steer as opposed to absolutely finalising them.
Cool. No, that's great. That's good because it lines up with the workshops, which I'm sure you did intentionally.
Fingers crossed.
Councillor Brown?
At this point, do we have our own legal advisors, given that the only lawyers we've met so far were the ones of Porirua?
Can I introduce you to
I can see a lawyer right now. The lawyer's in the room with us, Tim.
Hi, I'm Beth. No,
Can we have a look at your certificates?
look online. No, it's under advisement. We're closely looking at how the documents are coming out and what support we need to make sure we're getting the appropriate legal advice and support for the project. At the moment, we haven't appointed anyone. We are conscious of the need and desire to be collaborative as well, and so at the moment Navita and myself are supporting the project, but we are looking carefully at what we need and when.
Thanks. The one thing which I don't really understand is I was looking at the sort of the various bodies that are going to be on the page. So we have the stakeholder committee, which starts life as this AOG and then becomes the stakeholder committee. We have the establishment board. We have the chief executive who reports presumably to the establishment board. He or she has an establishment team. We also have this steering group, and we also have the council projects team. And I guess that what I'm curious about is, so there's this, during the establishment phase, is it the board, the establishment board, who's reporting to this stakeholder committee, and where does the steering group and the council project team, where do they all fit together? I mean, is there like a chain, or is there some sort of...
It's essentially that hierarchy that's presented there. So if we start at the bottom and work up, so the council project team will report into both the central establishment director in terms of progressing deliverables, but we'll have our internal project governance as well, which I haven't listed there, but for me, they assume that's a fundamental. So and then the establishment team report to the establishment director, the director up to the chief executives until such a time as there is an interim chief executive in place, and then interim chief executive to the board.
So where does the steering group fit in?
So the steering group are alongside the interim chief executive. So the chief executive steering group will have two purposes. Initially, for the interim chief executive to report to them, whilst we're recruiting for the establishment board. But also, even when the board is in place, our chief executives, our councils will need to and want to work collaboratively and make sure we're connected. So our chief executives will be meeting regularly, as they do now, to ensure that they have assurance that the progress is on track, that they are that the establishment work program is representing your interests and your needs and your political peers as the work progresses.
And in respect of the sort of decisions that we end up making around this table, especially in respect of the August ones, it would. I mean, I presume we've got these workshops between now and then, so we will be going through our kind of the factors that we will be looking at, which I presume is going to be, at the end of the day, the asset value that we're going to be transferring, the amount of debt that we're going to be transferring, whatever else, and also our voting rights in respect of the enterprise. But I think it would be very helpful to get some sort of understanding, ASIP, of exactly under what sort of headings our decisions are actually going to relate, because the faster we can sort of build up a kind of a base knowledge of the areas of the establishment entity that we are going to be deciding on, I think the better in terms of understanding, what are going to be the hot button things for us versus ones that we don't really care about. Because I mean, I think like the $750 million of debt, using that as an example, is clearly going to be something which we are going to be very concerned to make sure that it doesn't shrink at some point. So it would be this is a recommendation really in respect of the first of the workshops, would be to actually focus us on not so much the process stuff, but on the actual decisions that we are ultimately going to have to make, and what factors are going to be included in those.
So definitely take that on board. The supplementary document that was sent out to you today does start to talk to the type of decision and the content of the decision that we'll be asking you to make. What I would say is, so things like asset value, that type of thing, is included in the Water Services Delivery Plan. And whilst there's not a plan ready to share with you yet, what I can do is share what the structure of the document will be. So I'm happy to send that out via email. Yeah. Just on the debt number, so the debt number won't be finalised as part of the Water Services Delivery Plan. So the methodology has been agreed, and as we've mentioned a few times now, is that transfer number, that final transfer number, will be more around March time next year when we're closer to the July milestone, and that's when we'll have a better sense of what the final number will be using the agreed methodology. And so that takes into account as new projects are starting up, as projects close, assets taken offline, etc.
I think, yeah. I mean, I like...
I am going to need to...
Oh, sorry, last point.
Yes.
I think the debt amount doesn't really matter so much as long as it's fully ring-fenced.
Yes,
so I think the ring-fencing structure is going to be critically important.
Yep, understood.
Mayor Farmer.
just with that stakeholder committee that we would need to make a decision on December, would we also have the opportunity to determine who the chair would be? And, for instance, not a current mayor, not a political appointment, just to address some of the concerns that councillors have had about those relationships and the politics around the table?
I'm not entirely sure. I'll need to check on that one, Mayor. I will probably get some legal advice from our friends back there. But the decision that we'll be bringing to you in December is for Wellington City Council's representative to that committee. How far that extends into the chairperson, I'll need to follow up and come back to you on.
Councillor Free, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I do. I want to ask a difficult question. Is this in public excluded? I can't. Sorry.
No, it is public.
Okay. So, yeah. I'm still going to ask the question because I actually do need to ask this. So how come when we're more than half of the cost of setting this up and we're more than half of the assets, that currently we seem to have had very little say, like we're not, another council was chairing this process and doing the secretariat for it. Another council has had their person as being the chair of the Political Oversight Committee. I mean, where do we actually get some leverage that reflects the skin that we've got in this particular game?
Deep breath before you answer that question, Margot.
So, I think I would position it differently, Councillor. As we're working together with the council, so we have the Advisory Oversight Group, which is the Mayoral Forum. The Mayoral Forum has an independent chair, that's Dame Kerry Prendergast. And so there is definite independence across that group. We have an independent chairperson. Our chief executives are working collaboratively together, both council chief executives and our mana whenua partner chief executives as well. So in that mix, there does need to be a lead for activities such as procurement. It would not make any sense to have the procurement activities distributed across a number of councils or our mana whenua partners. So from a logistics point of view, it is just easier and makes good sense to have that coordinated. As it so happens, that is Porirua City Council, and there is a huge amount of work involved in that. So to my Porirua City Council colleagues, thank you very much, and I'm glad it's not me.
Can I also just add to that, Margot, at not one point in time as an officer as part of this have I ever felt that I haven't been consulted and working through that process. So for all of the procurement decisions, all CFOs are sitting around a table collaboratively working together to test and challenge the appropriate things at the appropriate time. So it's not about value. You know, I have been sitting alongside all my CFO colleagues. I know the group that Margot sits on, you're sitting alongside all your colleagues. It has been a true partnership as opposed to a hierarchy in the working model, and that goes right throughout the way up. So there's lots of groupings. There's the working group, there's the CFO group, there's the chief executive group. When needed, those groups come together to make decisions, you know, and we all sit in a room collectively together. It has been completely collaborative throughout the whole entire process.
I think, and I don't want to speak for Councillor Free, but I do think her question presents a viewpoint that is probably quite widely felt amongst this committee, and I think has an influence on how the extra kind of safeguards and information and all of those things that we require to get to the final decisions for this governing body, and that I'm happy that officers feel that way, but I don't believe elected members feel that way.
And I think you know, certainly the additional information requests, those things have been treated with utmost importance by all of us as we bring those into every conversation. So I can be quite categoric about some of the direction that we've been given. We bring those to the table and speak to that on behalf of you as elected members. So definitely.
Did you have another question, Councillor Free?
I did, and this one goes, I think, a little bit to a point that Councillor Rogers made. There are going to be some workshops, and I'm not totally over when they're going to be, but I did wonder if we need another formal point put into that overall plan, that timeline plan, that you come to us with a formal heads up of what's likely to be presented to us in August for our governance arrangements, so that it doesn't come as a surprise and we don't just get 1 week or a few days to deal with whatever it is. I'd quite like to see a position in that diagram prior to the current little asterisks where there's a commitment to come to us with what the thinking is. In an informal way, but a formally informal way.
Councillor, I've scheduled 3 briefings with yourselves for early August, and I think in total it's about 5.5 hours of pure delight for us all to share together. The challenge that we have is, of course, yourselves are on recess in July, and so it is then just that balancing act of fitting in those enough briefings as I can between you coming back from recess and the decision point. In all honesty, I could probably fill all of your calendars with briefing spots leading up to that August decision if I was allowed to. So do it. So as I say, I have scheduled in, I think it is about 5.5 hours worth of briefings as it is. Yeah.
And I know...
Can we formally note on that diagram the last of those, the one that's closest to the decision? And just, I think we have to have some leverage here. And I think if the other councils realise that we are going to be well informed and possibly able to craft, well-focused amendments like I felt we did back in May, there's just, somehow I feel we've got to protect our residents. This is huge for us. A really, really major decision. Like, to me, this is the most important work we'll be doing, really, between now and the election.
Thank you, Councillor Free. And I just wanted to add, Margot, if I think that I hate to speak on behalf of everyone here, but if it was helpful to schedule anything during our recess, I think the magnitude of this, we should just do that if it's helpful. Yeah, towards the end in particular, we're not. I think we're less precious about keeping that time meeting free than we are about getting all of the information that we need. Yeah.
Sadly, I think it makes me incredibly happy to hear that. Actually,
I think I don't know if it makes us happy, but it's still what we want. Councillor Randall.
So I just want to circle back to the longer term governance and, in a sense, control of the new entity and when that's going to be decided in terms of the stakeholder group, because there are different models of representation, and as has been outlined by the councillors, there's both a concern that the governance failure of Wellington Water isn't replicated insofar as we can do that, but also that the significant scale of this council, which represents literally half of the water consumers in this new entity, how that scale is going to be reflected in the stakeholder board. So the question I have is not to resolve that, but it's more about saying when will we get the options of what is going to be considered and who is going to make the final decision on this.
Yep, and believe you me, I have heard you all loud and clear. So the August decision point will begin that conversation with you, and that will be informed by not only our many conversations but also the amendment from our May meeting where you gave me instruction to go away and explore proportional voting. So all of those will feed into that August decision point where we will be asking for a steer, and from that August decision point, that's when those documents will be taken away by your nominated representative on the AOG stakeholder group to continue developing those, and the final decision to ratify those arrangements and your representative on the Enduring Committee will be in December this year.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Pannett.
Do you believe that the other councils have a very good will to sort of make this organisation work a little bit better? I'm not being facetious. Are they seeing that there have been some problems and have identified them and want to make change?
Yes, I do. My experience at working with my colleagues and being privy to some of the workshops with our chief executives, I do think that's the case.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of that session. So thank you, Margot, for sharing your dulcet tones with us. We really do enjoy it. And so we'll switch off the live stream.